Okay, everybody, so this video is in addition to the other videos on reading research articles. I give you those videos because I wanted you to hear other perspective on reading research articles and to realize there is no one way to read research articles, right? I will review the article I assigned to you and point out key aspects to keep in mind. Here you have some videos. I do want you to review these, like I said, to get different perspectives. Yes, the people that created these videos are in different fields, but the advice still applies, right? In terms of how you should take notes, what you should pay attention to. So let me make this larger and we could get started. Now keep in mind, I'm not going to tell you what the findings are. The goal is for you to be able to do that on your own and meet in your groups and discuss that and kind of figure that out together, figure out where you get stuck, what's the difficult part, right? Normally we would do that in lab, but we're online, right? So I'm hoping you do that with your groups. That's the whole idea, right? Making sure you all understand what the findings are so when you go and read on your own, you can figure that out. So this is an article, right? Deus Ex Machina, the influence of polling place on voting behavior by Dr. Rutchick, a faculty member in our department. And the first thing I want to point your attention to is the abstract. You want to make sure you read the abstract of any paper, right? You read the abstract and you kind of can figure out what the main findings are. Now, some abstracts will hide the findings. They don't give away the findings in the abstract. I hate those kind of abstracts, but some people do it because they want you to read the paper. That makes sense. But usually, or often enough, people will summarize the findings in the abstract as well, right? So keep that in mind. Oftentimes you can find what they found here, right? Like an overview of what was found. Another thing to keep in mind, you have all this information often in the header, sometimes in the footer, and from here you can figure out things like the journal, the volume, the issue, right? So if it says number, that's the issue, the year, and the DOI address, which is here, right? Now let's see if this has anything in the footer. Some additional information. You don't need that for the citation, but keep that in mind. If you're having a hard time finding that information, you can find it here. Also, if you kind of can't find it here, you should be able to go back to the database where you found this article and get all the information you need for citing from there. Okay, so here you have the abstract. Next thing I would suggest doing is skipping all the way to the discussion section. Okay, so I passed it. Keep in mind it's going to be different places depending on the article. Okay, and keep in mind that I'm okay with you using articles from other fields as long as they're empirical, right? Meaning they collected their own data with human participants. Let's see. So when you're looking through it, make sure they have a results section. If they're missing that, then it's likely not an empirical study. Also, keep in mind that if you're looking at articles from different fields, they'll have different headings, right? Even in psychology, across fields in psychology, you'll find slight variations in terms of how they name the sections. Here, he called it general discussion, mostly because there's several studies, right? Here you can get an overview of what was found, right? So even without reading the article, just reading the abstract, we know that in study one, right? Study one, it was found that churches were associated with support of conservative candidates. So the participants were more likely to support a conservative candidate if they were voting in the church, right? Just from reading this and the abstract, I actually didn't even read the abstract this time, I can kind of decipher what was found in study one, right? And here you have the listing of all the different studies. So this study happened to have several studies, right? Or this research paper had different studies included. So that's a second thing I would do, abstract discussion, and then go back and I would skim the lit review. Just so you can get an idea of how they're framing their analysis, where are they coming from, what are they hypothesizing. You definitely need to know that. And don't get too stuck on words you don't know. As you're reading, if you're like, I don't know what they're saying, like, this is beyond what I can do. Don't think that. Don't get stuck on wordy sentences. Don't get stuck on terms that are outside of your current realm of knowledge. See if you can kind of figure out what the findings are. What's the main thing to take away from this article? The lit review is important in terms of understanding the previous literature, but what you really care about in terms of writing your own lit review is what this study found, right? When you include this study in your lit review, you're not telling me who they referenced. You're telling me what did they find? What did Rutchick find in his study? The results section is, read through it, but don't get too stuck on understanding the analyses. I would skim this section. I said skim the lit review. Yeah, skim it, but but still read it. But the results section, read through it, but don't stop and get confused by things like MANOVA. What's that mean? What's this mean, right? What? I can't figure it out. Read through it. If this is something you feel comfortable with, see what you can take away. But again, we're focusing on the main takeaway. Sometimes you can look at figures like this one, and you can kind of glean the overall finding, right? So this is one issue that they looked at, abortion pill, and should, based on this, I'm thinking like, should people be able to put the abortion pill as an insurance claim? How about workers' comp? Chapel is a lined bar. Academic building is a clear bar, or the white bar. So it looks like, it doesn't look significant. I'll explain why in a second. But it looks like there's slightly less support for the abortion pill in the chapel, for the people who voted in a chapel versus people who voted in an academic building. When you read it, you're going to realize that Rutchick was looking at voting place, like where people vote in a church, in some academic building, right? When you go to vote, there, sometimes they use high schools, elementary schools. Does that impact? Is that related to how people vote? If there's overlap in these bars, that likely suggests that they're not significant findings. I would still look at the results, the written results, to understand that. But what I'm trying to point out is look at the figures, right? You're stuck. You're not sure what they're saying in the results section. Sometimes the figures can help you understand. The discussion definitely should help you understand. Let's see. So notice that Rutchick has different studies, study 1, study 2, study 3, up to study 5. Review each of the studies. Definitely read the methodology so you can understand how the different studies were carried out. And notice that each study has its own section, right? Let me go back up. It had its own results section here. This is for study 5. Its own method section. And here you have some literature related to study 5, right? So keep that in mind. You could think of it as kind of like 5 mini papers together, and you'll often see that sometimes researchers will replicate their study in different situations to lend more support to their claims and their findings. So that's those are the main tips I have for you all. Again, if you have, I'm just scrolling through here. Let me actually look and see if anything else. For now, I think that's it. When you're meeting with your groups, discuss, okay, what's the main takeaway? What am I understanding from this article? Do I understand the findings for all 5 articles? Now, the point is for you to get familiar with dissecting articles and understanding the findings. Don't get so caught up in like, well, let me just read it from start to beginning, and then you're confused at the end. No, approach it strategically, abstract, discussion, go study by study. Don't get so stuck on the results section. Use bar graphs, the figures, to help you, and see if you can figure out the findings, right? So take that approach instead of the approach you would take with a book, right? Where you would read it from first page to last page and then reflect and see, oh, what did that mean? No. Approach research articles strategically, and the lit review is helpful. Definitely read that section. For your paper, use a lit review to understand what their claims were, but in terms of the literature they're referencing, use that as a way to find more articles related to your study, right? So when you're writing your own research paper, you're going to focus on the results found in this, and if this was your paper, you would focus on the results of that paper. The lit review can still be helpful in terms of helping you find other articles, right? But when you're summarizing, if the Rutchick article is your article, you would summarize his findings, not his lit review. If you wanted to include something from the lit review, then go find that original source, right? And then if it's an empirical article, then you can use it. If you want to go beyond what I'm asking you to include, right? If you want to go beyond the number of articles I'm asking you to include in your paper, then I'm fine with you including other sources that aren't empirical, right? Maybe you want to include a definition. It's from another paper, and you're not, it's not an empirical paper, but it's a good definition. Yeah, sure, use that, but that won't count towards your requirement in terms of using empirical articles. So anyways, I'll stop there. Email me if you have any questions. Good luck.